Perfect. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
This is the greatest thing I've ever heard.
Perfect thing.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having an amazing day. My name is Justin, and today I am uploading and showing you guys my album review of Yes's album Close to the Edge. This is their 5th studio album, released in September of 1972. I'll also link a playlist in which you can go back and listen to some of my first and initial reactions to the songs on the album, as well as a song review I have of You and I.
Without further ado, let's get into this.
In 1869, the Transcontinental Railroad was completed in North America, connecting the east and western parts of the country, making it whole. In 1903, the Wright brothers successfully completed the first flight with an airplane. In 1908, the Ford Model T was released, providing the first affordable transportation and automobile for the masses. The similarities in each of these historical milestones relates to travel, to connection, to dreaming of the impossible and making it possible. In 1972, Yes released Close to the Edge, a musical epoch in the progressive era, allowing us as well to travel to impossible worlds never dreamed of, never thought of, and connect us with sounds we didn't even know existed. Now, suffice to say, this is an album whose reputation precedes itself and is constantly labeled as one of the greatest albums of all time. And fortunately, it lives up to that hype. It is a titan in symphonic song and poetry, a testament to taking risk in music, in art, in your creativity, and it embodies the actual nature of progressive music. Recording for the album had begun in late spring, and while Bruford, who shortly left the band after recording, described the process as arduous and stressful, the ending result would become, as we know it, a classic in music history. One thing I thought was really interesting about this album is the production side of it, which was produced by Eddie Offord, and he wished to recreate in the recording studio the feeling of the band playing live, that same high that they would get in there. So in an attempt to do this, he had the road crew assemble a stage for which the band would play on. And production-wise, yes, but even just the emotional value that he got out of this and we get out of this as the audience and as listeners really shines through in these heights that the band would get to. The album opens with the title track and possibly the most well-known and popular song out of all of progressive music, if not one of them, opening with peaceful chirps of birds and a babbling brook. A picturesque scene is set in paradise. I love this, by the way. Really suddenly, the band burst out of this scene with a furious improvised jam that's jarring, it's discordant, it's claustrophobic, and wonderfully careless in its action. Now, some of that may sound like a critique, but it's actually a compliment. From this jam, the band briefly interrupts the fireworks display with glimpses of heaven, delivering a harmonic and heavenly call before we're thrown back into the fray. This whole opening really shows off two distinct sides of Yes: the passion and intensity that burned in these young men, and the uplifting spiritual nature and melodies that they would be also very well known for. John's pacing in the verse is appropriately moving, with a really nice emphasis on stressed and unstressed syllables and tones. Squire's peekaboo-like bass sneaking in on the afterthoughts of the lines, nicely accenting John's lighter tones. And then Howe and Squire play a brief duet before the song moves into a more summer-like feel. Wakeman on the keys and on the organ, he brings a lot of the subtlety and the nuance in this section and really throughout the whole song, performing like the big toe of the band. You don't realize how important it is until it's missing, in which case you would lose balance. And speaking of balance, each member in the band is completely in line with one another. Every member is clearly heard, clearly contributing crucial moments and elements to the epic. Production, as I mentioned, is top-notch and ensures that nothing here sounds dated and everyone is clearly heard. After a short and sweet climax, the band brings it back down into simplicity. I love the drum pattern that Bruford comes up with here, starting almost offbeat and then Squire coming in with that strong-handed bass line. It's just a fog-like ambience begins to fill the space, marsh-like yearnings and water droplets fall. From this primordial ooze blossoms one of the most beautiful vocal harmonies that I've heard, period. With Howe and Squire providing the deeper and rich notes in this section, and John just floating and drifting effortlessly above them, it's a hint of further developments to come. and come they do. Glasses stained and cathedral walls rise, and the vocal resolve ends on a high note, flowing into a cacophonic burst of organ, echoings of the beginnings of the universe itself. Cosmic synth lines spawn from this and eventually leads into one of my favorite organ solos from Wakeman. I love how the band breaks it down rhythmically part way through this, and then Wakeman, he just completely ignores him. He just keeps on doing his thing. He doesn't have a care in the world. He is jamming out. John and company return with the verse, but this time there is a new energy, there's a refreshed spirit, and as if something's changed on this journey. Definitely for them, but as well for us. We feel that the song is building up to something. There is a tension in the air. We don't quite know what, and then
I get up, I get down.
I can't tell you just how much this ending gets me. Even when I was writing this review and even when I was writing out the outline just listening to the music, I mean, I've heard it so many times at this point, and every single time that I listen to it, I get shivers, I get goosebumps, my heartbeat starts racing. Like, it is just one of those moments in music. It feels like a spiritual awakening, a holy anointment. It may be the closest that some of us get to God. Moving into the next track on the next side of the album, And You and I, we kind of slow things down briefly. We begin with a patiently focused tuning of the guitar, gently strummed chords, and the heartbeat-like rhythm of the bass that soulfully pulses to life. John's poetic delivery here seems to echo between canyon walls, and Wakeman's synth acts as like a gap wind, gently breezing between these walls as well, and yet with a certain force between each of the lines. Calls from the valley sound out with a brief harmonic bliss before shifting into an emotional petit mot, complete with resounding keys, with purposely placed drumming, and with symphonic cries of the mellotron for good measure. At just a little over 5 minutes, we've already reached the heavens, and it's at this point in the song that I personally ask myself, how much higher can we go? But as those opening chords return from the beginning of the song, this time with a little bit more zest, we realize, and I realize, that maybe it's not about the destination, but more so about the journey. Squire and Wakeman guide us into the final chorus, treading familiar grounds but changing everything. How can a song sound like the apocalypse and yet paradise? Sunrise and sunset, eclipse and dawn, an ending, and yet more so like a beginning. Hold on, I want to read this part directly from my outline. It is a spiritual transmigration of ourselves, our souls, and sound. It is a piece that defies the limitations of time and will remain eternal.
I thought that was a good line.
Moving into the final track, Siberian Kachru, this song jumpstarts the album with an energy that I wouldn't have expected at the end of the album. Especially after the really conclusive nature of And You and I. This is like a musical defibrillator on our chest. Squire and Bruford's drumming ignites, the mellotron retains that mysticism that we've come to expect from the band at this point. Hal features a very funky and noteworthy lead guitar, which Wakeman runs alongside with at certain moments. The vocal harmonies that begin to overlap each other feel like a call to action, beautifully balanced by the guitar here as well. And then the band gets into a little bit of a jam section, featuring very well-timed harpsichord, cutting guitar, underrated drumming, and then about 3/4 of the way through, John begins a chant. He begins a little bit of an incantation, ringing in the spirits of the mellotron, the marching drums, the darkly explosive guitar, before returning to that funky bass and mellotron motif. I like how on top of the monotonous bass, Hal just continue his guitar lines while John and company, they come in with vocal hits that just provide like almost like a poppy kind of nuance to the track. It's in this section that we find the playfulness of Yes as well. It adds a high-spirited humor to the track and to the overall feel of this album. And then finally we conclude with a fade out as Hal appropriately closes the curtains on this epic album and this epic journey that we've just taken. So those are just some of my brief thoughts and my brief wrap-ups on the album, on each song track by track. But now let's get into my favorite moments, my favorite lyrics, and then my song rankings for the album. So my favorite moment on the album is from the title track, Close to the Edge, and specifically this is the time from about 8:30 to 12:12, i.e. the I Get Up section. I find the melodies here just intensely comforting. They're so mesmerizing. This is really the part of the track that I get lost in and I want to stay in forever. The harmonies are hypnotic, and John's final notes at the end of that section, specifically before the organ comes in, is utterly euphoric. My favorite lyrics in the album are the ending of And You and I, and it goes as follows. And you and I climb, crossing the shapes of the morning. And you and I reach over the sun for the river. And you and I climb clearer towards the movement. And you and I called over valleys of endless seas. The song feels like it's speaking of sharing experiences with one another, with each other, of learning about the world, learning about the deeper things, of the things surrounding us day by day, gaining knowledge and insights, but doing it with someone else. And whether that someone else is a lover, a friend, a family member, or some sort of higher power, it's all about connection and connecting with you, with with everyone. And then my song rankings for the album are just the album in order. There's no way to rank any of these. Just Close to the Edge, and You and I, Siberian True. It's just, it gets worse as it goes because I know it's going to end. Anyways, that's my wrap up for the album. There's nothing else to say except it's perfect. This was one of the hardest reviews I had to write because I did not know how to describe perfection as so many other people have done so before me. But this is my shot at it. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and more so I hope that you enjoyed this album. If you haven't listened to it, please go do that. Don't watch this review, go listen to the music. You are more than welcome to join me in the comments down below. Let me know your favorite moments, your favorite lyrics, and your song rankings here on the album. Let me know if you don't think that it's a perfect album. Let me know if you think that this is a horrible album. I would love to hear from you. You can also support the channel on Patreon, but you don't have to. I just hope that you enjoyed your stay here, enjoyed your watch of this video, and I hope that you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.